Hello, in this last lesson of Module 1, we're going to write fractions as decimals using long division. There are a number of steps for changing a fraction to a decimal. Step 1 is to take the numerator and divide it by the denominator. So the bottom number is going to go outside, or is going to be your divisor. So in long division, 1/2 will be 2 on the outside of the long division, and 1 on the inside. So the numerator goes inside the long division symbol. Then when we have the numerator on the inside, step 2, we're going to add a decimal and as many zeros as we need. So usually my recommendation is just put 1 0 at a time until you know that you need to keep adding zeros. You can pop your decimal up in your quotient, and you're going to start to divide. So we're going to divide 2 into 1. That goes 0 times. So I'm going to move myself over, dividing 2 into 10, which goes 5 times. In this case, 5 times 2 is 10. So we're going to subtract, getting a 0 remainder. If you have a remainder, you're going to continue to add zeros, bringing down and continue dividing until hopefully the decimal terminates. So that's step 3. Step 4, if you're adding a lot of zeros, you're going to need to round at a certain point. We're not going to make you continue to divide over and over again. The thousandths place is common, so that's going to be 3 decimal places. But in order to be able to round to the thousandths place, you're going to need to go to the 10,000ths place, or 4 decimal places. And that way you'll be able to accurately round. So we'll do a few examples here. Number 1, we're going to change 3/8 to a decimal. So we're going to create our long division. The denominator is our divisor. So that may feel strange because it's the greater number, but always the denominator is what you're dividing by. So we have 3 as our dividend. I'm going to add a 0 and a decimal place to get started. So I'm going to put my decimal up in the quotient. 8 does not go into 3, so you can put a 0 there and then look over to 30. 8 divides into 30 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. And now we're ready to subtract. 30 minus 24 is 6. So we have a remainder, so we're going to add a 0 and bring it down and continue to divide. Now we're dividing 8 into 60. That goes 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. We subtract. 60 minus 56 is 4. Because we have a remainder, we're going to continue to add a 0 and bring it down. We divide once more here. 8 goes into 40, this time perfectly, 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. So we're going to subtract and get a 0 remainder, and now our decimal has terminated. So as a decimal, 3/8 is equal to 0.375. or 375 thousandths. For number 2, we're going to change 2/3 to a decimal. So we create our long division. Our denominator is our divisor, and our numerator is our dividend. So we place our decimal, pop it up in the quotient, and add a 0, and we can begin to long divide. 3 goes into 2, not at all. So we move our I over, taking the 0 to make 3 into 20. 3 goes into 20 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. We subtract 20 minus 18 and we get a 2. So we need to add a 0 and bring it down and continue to divide. But when we bring that 0 down, we discover that we're right back where we started with a 20. So let's see what happens. 3 goes into 20 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. We subtract, we get 2 remainder. And if we add a 0, we're right back to the 20. So what we see happening here is a repeating decimal. it's just going to be 6, 6, 6 over and over again up in our quotient. So at this point, when we realize that we have a repeating decimal, we can stop. And what we do with a repeating decimal is we just write the first number, the 0.6, and we put a repeater bar above. We don't necessarily need to round these ones. I'm very fine with you stopping and putting the repeater bar in the tenths place. When you have a mixed number and you want to change it to a decimal, you have a couple methods that work, and you'll pick the one that works best for you. So I'll show both methods. Number one is holding the whole number and calculating the fraction. So we have 2 and 1/4, which means 2 and the decimal of the fraction. So what we can do is hold that whole number and just calculate the fraction to get the remainder of our decimal. So we're going to take the 4 as our divisor and the 1 inside, place a 0 and a decimal place up in your quotient there, and then you can begin to divide. 4 does not go into 1, but 4 does go into 10 twice. 2 times 4 is 8, so we subtract. 10 minus 8 is 2, and we add a 0 and bring it down. Now we divide again. 4 goes into 25 times. 5 times 4 is 20, so our decimal has now terminated. So the 0.25 gets brought along with the 2, because it was 2 and 1/4. So our final answer here is going to be 2.25. The other way that you can do this, and a lot of people do prefer the second method, is to change the mixed number to an improper fraction and then to convert to a decimal. So as an improper fraction, 2 1/4 is 9/4. So then we go ahead and long divide. 4 is our divisor, 9 is our dividend. We can add a decimal there, even add a 0. We're going to go ahead and divide. 4 goes into 9 twice. 2 times 4 is 8. We subtract, and we bring down the 0. 4 goes into 10 twice. 2 times 4 is 8. Subtract, we get a 2 remainder, so we add a 0 and bring it down. 4 goes into 25 times. 5 times 4 is 20. So if we change a mixed number to an improper fraction and then long divide, we'll get the same answer as if we hold the whole number and just long divide the fraction portion. So we're going to change these fractions into decimals, and if we need to round, we're going to round to the thousandths place. So number one, we have 3/7. So we're going to create our division. 7 is our divisor, 3 is our dividend. I'm going to put decimal and a 0 and put that decimal lined up in my quotient. 7 goes into 3 not at all, but 7 does go into 30 4 times. 4 times 7 is 28, and we subtract 30 minus 28, which is 2. We're going to add a 0, bring it down, and divide again. 7 goes into 20 twice. 2 times 7 is 14. We subtract. 20 minus 14 is 6. We're going to add a 0 again and bring it down. 7 goes into 60 8 times. 8 times 7 is 56. We subtract. 60 minus 56 is 4. So at this point, we're at the thousandths place, but we have to round to the thousandths place. So we're going to have to do one more 0, and then we can stop if this decimal doesn't terminate. So we're going to take this last 0 down. 7 goes into 40. This is not even, so it goes 5 times. 5 times 7 is 35, so we will have a remainder, but we can stop now because this decimal could go on and on and on. Maybe it never terminates. So we have gone to the 10,000ths place, which is what we need to be able to round to the thousandths place. So we are asking ourselves, does this 8 bump up to a 9 or stay as an 8? The 5 next to it is the decider. So the 5 is going to push that decimal up. So our final answer here is going to be 0.429. For number 2, we have a mixed number. So we have those two options. We can either just do the fraction portion and hold the 5 as the front of our decimal, or we can change it to an improper fraction. I'll change it to an improper fraction for this one. So 8 times 5 is 40, plus 5 is 45. So as an improper fraction, this is going to be 45/8. We can make our long division. 8 is our divisor, 45 is our dividend, and we can begin to long divide. So 8 goes into 45 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. We subtract, and we get a 5 remainder. Now this 45 is just 45. We're going to have to start adding zeros here, so I'm going to put the decimal up in my quotient, add a 0, and bring it down. Now we're doing 8 into 50. That goes 6 times. 6 times 8 is 48. We subtract. 50 minus 48 is 2. So we're going to add another 0 and bring it down. 8 goes into 20 twice. 2 times 8 is 16. Subtract. And we have a 4 remaining. So we're going to do one more 0 here. Bring it down. And this time it's going to work out for us. 8 goes into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. So this decimal is now going to terminate. So 5.625 is 5 5/8. Number 3 is already an improper fraction. So we're going to go ahead and place the 4 as our divisor and the 13 as our dividend. I'm going to put the decimal right away, right there. And I'm even going to place a 0 because I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to go beyond the 13. Because 4 goes into 13 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12. We subtract, getting a 1. Bring down that 0 and divide again. 4 goes into 10 twice. 2 times 4 is 8. Subtract. 10 minus 8 is 2. Going to need to add another 0. I'll bring that 0 down, and now I'm going to divide 4 into 20. 4 goes into 20 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. So we have a 0 remainder. This decimal has terminated. So 13/4 is equal to 3.25.